Welcome to the JFK assassination. Do the math, part 6. In this segment, I will take a final look at the AP photo. There'll be some big surprises. In the last episode, I showed you that the position of the president's hands in frame 255 did not match his hands in the AP photo. As big of a problem that this is, it is only one of many problems with trying to call frame 255 the equivalent frame of the AP photo. If you look at all the frames leading up to and including frame 255, you will see that frame 253 comes the closest to matching the AP photo. But there are things that prevent calling it a match. 1. Mrs. Kennedy's left hand is too far down on the president's arm. 2. And this is a big problem for frame 255 as well, is the position of the driver's right hand. In the Zapruder film, from frame 241 on, the driver's right hand is at the 2 o'clock position, high on the steering wheel. Yet in the AP photo, his right hand is not visible. So, was there a time when the driver did not have his hand at this position on the steering wheel? Yes. From frame 195 to frame 238, his right hand was not visible at all above the dash. At frame 238, he starts bringing his hand upward to the 2 o'clock position. He completes this movement at frame 241. This means that the AP photo had to be taken prior to frame 241 because the driver's hand was visible above the dash. And there is another problem. One of the properties of presidential limousines is that they are covered with highly polished painted metal. And one of the properties of highly polished painted metal is that it's highly reflective, like a mirror. And because of that, they reflect images of objects near them. This presidential limousine was true to form. There is a reflection of objects on the left side of the limousine in the AP photo. In this door panel, one can see the two motorcycles following just behind and to the left. They are close, so they appear slightly larger than they actually are. The front wheel panel has another image reflected in it, and this is what is being reflected. This distinctly dressed child, who is wearing a white hooded sweatshirt and red short pants. While the image is small, one can clearly see the reflection of this child. In the Zapruder film, from frame 133 until frame 195, this child can clearly be seen running along with the presidential limousine. At that point, the child stops and places its arms directly at its side. Notice the child's arms in the AP photo. They, too, are down at the child's side. The reason one can see the reflection of this child in frame 210 is because the limousine is in the section of Elm Street that curves slightly to the left, so the reflections seen on the left side of the limousine are from the left and behind. Had the photo been taken at frame 255, the limousine would have been located in the straight portion and would have reflected that which was directly beside it. This child would have been too far back to be seen in the reflection. The right side of the limousine also had an incredibly important reflection, and that is the reflection of the single motorcycle officer. In the AP photo, this officer appears to be beside the president and possibly looking at him. We can track the location of this officer by the reflection in the right rear panel of the limousine, of the motorcycle, and the officer's white helmet. Starting at frame 160, one can clearly see the helmet above the right rear wheel, with the silver fender and windscreen just in front. These images slowly shift back until frame 202, when one loses sight of the limousine's right rear wheel. The helmet disappears at frame 203. Throughout this segment of the film, this officer was further ahead of his fellow officers on the left side of the limousine, and close enough to the limousine and far enough out to the right to be seen in the reflection. One can still see the actual motorcycle until frame 212. Except for frames 208 through 211, which were edited. Frame 212 is after the AP photo was taken. One sees the reflection again at frame 232, even though one never again gains sight of the motorcycle. By frame 242, this reflection disappears from the presidential limousine. What appears to be the left front red light of this motorcycle is seen in the lower right front fender of the Cadillac just behind the president's limousine for this one frame. Neither the motorcycle or its reflection is ever seen again. The closest this officer ever came to the president was from frames 207 through 212. Given the angle from which Mr. Alton was shooting, this is the only time when the officer would appear to be next to or even near the president. At frame 242 through frame 255, the officer is too far back to be in the line of sight to appear as if he is next to the president. This is final proof that the AP photo can't be frame 255. And all of this supports the testimony of Governor Connally and the First Lady of Texas about the president being struck earlier by a different bullet than the one that struck Governor Connally. And, once again, all of this means the AP photo shows that the single bullet theory is pure bunk. While researching the reflections in the presidential limousine, I found something rather startling and interesting about the AP photo. The AP photo is a highly edited photograph, and as you will see, there's a very important reason for it being so edited. How can one tell the photograph has been edited? First, this photograph is almost twice as wide as it is high. Mr. Alchin was using a zoom lens, not a panoramic lens, that would produce a wide area scene. Plus, the kind of lens he was using is different from the telephoto lens. It brings a large distant area in closer, as opposed to bringing in a small area in both close and large. We know the kind of lens he was using because Mr. Alchin's testimony. He stated that he had set the lens for 60 feet. Second is the centering of the photograph. The center is here. When one zooms in, one is usually zooming in on a particular subject. The subject will be at the center of the photograph. Here is the center of the AP photograph. What is the subject? It isn't the president or his limousine. It appears that this photo was originally a general view of the motorcade and the crowd on both sides. But the photo you are seeing is a result of the photograph being both cropped and enlarged to change the view. One can tell there has been an enlargement by the general grainy appearance and that the street color is somewhat washed out. Let me show you how this was done by replicating the AP photo through editing of one of the photographs I took on my trip to Dallas. I was using a camera that had a similar zoom feature. I took this photo standing near where Mr. Alchin stood when he took his picture. My intent wasn't to mimic Mr. Alchin, so I wasn't standing exactly where he stood. I was standing about 15 feet closer, which makes the objects in the finished photo a little bit larger. And I wasn't standing in the lane, I was beside it. But as you can see, with cropping and enlargement, the finished photo is very similar. It has the same centering and height, up to the top of the third floor windows of the Dow Tex building, and the same view from side to side. Now this is the photograph after it was cropped, but before it was enlarged. And this is why they cropped the AP photo. The full photograph that was taken between shots 1 and 2 showed both the 6th floor window of the school book depository building and the top of the Dow Tex building. And since Oswald was not in the 6th floor window of the school book depository building, and one could see the assassins on top of the Dow Tex building, the full version could never be shown. And you can bet the farm that if Oswald had been in the 6th floor window aiming his rifle for the next shot, that the full photograph showing Oswald there, or a different crop version such as this, in which you would have seen Oswald's face as well as the rifle, would have been on the front page of every newspaper and the cover of every magazine in the world the very next day, and we wouldn't still be discussing how the assassination occurred 47 years later. So what happened to the full version of this photograph? It is quite possible that it still exists in the archive material along with the 4 unpublished photographs, all of which are locked away until long after everyone who was alive that day is dead. The Republic died that day along with the President. As long as the government is allowed to keep secrets from the American people, it will never be revived. How can one have a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, when the government can tell the people that they do not have the right to know what their government did or is doing? Thanks for watching.